Welcome to Spotlight on Podcast. I'm Ollie Phoenix, the CEO of the Barton Partnership, and you're listening to the podcast that brings together corporate leaders, business executives, entrepreneurs, to discuss hot topics across the business landscape affecting many of our companies today. I'm joined today, delighted to be joined by Tim Nixon, CEO of Management Consulting at Teneo. Welcome, Tim.
Ollie, thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
Tim and I have known each other for many years.
Too many years.
And it's a delight to have him on today. We are going to be discussing a topic that resonates across all markets, but particularly within professional services. I've personally worked with Tim and Teneo for many years. I've worked across management consulting on senior search, mandates, broader talent advisory topics. And over the last 20 years, there's been many things that have disrupted and changed the landscape, but maybe none more so than the topic we're going to discuss today, which is AI. So without further ado, Tim, for the benefit of those listening, do you want to introduce yourself, say a little bit about yourself and Teneo?
Yeah, with absolute pleasure. So I am, almost my entire career, I've been a management consultant. Firstly with a small boutique called Credo, and then when we sold Credo to Teneo in 2017 with Teneo. Teneo is a 2,000-person professional services firm headquartered in New York. And the business does a range of different things: strategic communication, financial advisory, and then management consulting is the third major area. I run that division globally, so that's a team that spans from San Francisco through to Dubai. But my client work is all in tech. So all of my clients, software, IT services businesses. And that's how I fill my day, essentially. Dual hatting between figuring out problems for clients and handling the challenges of a fast-growing strategy consulting capability.
And to kick us off, AI, is this the single greatest opportunity the consulting industry has ever seen? Or is this the beginning of the end for the model that effectively built a number of these businesses, maybe including your own?
So I mean, this is a hotly debated topic, right? I think my first comment is AI's going to have a tremendous impact on professional services and management consulting. Not necessarily more than other professional services. I think some other professional services are probably more exposed, but it's going to have a really meaningful impact. And I spend my whole life with tech executives, right? I do think we need to keep some things in perspective, right? I constantly quote Amara's law, which was we frequently overestimate the impact of technology in the short term and then underestimate it in the long term. We are, and I think we all know we are, in a hype cycle. And anyone in tech understands the hype cycle. They can draw it for you, but we're still there. So we need to be a bit more... we need to try and keep things in perspective. There have been a number of major changes in my industry over the last 20-some years that I've been in it. I don't think we've ever... I think the difference is we're so aware that we think this is going to have a major impact. There were lots of other changes that have actually had a really major impact that either just happened so slowly we didn't notice, or actually we just weren't really paying enough attention. So
give me a good example.
Well, I mean, the internet made a pretty big, so let's call it Google, right? I mean, there were. I mean, I'm old enough to remember search engines before Google, but immediately prior to me starting my consulting career, you would research things by going to the library, right? I mean, that is not that long ago, right? Data was accessed by consulting firms having in-house libraries of stuff, or we would send people to go and sit in the British Library for days to research stuff, right? And then we just sat at our computers and found the information and found more information and better information. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. Now, at the time, clients were saying, oh, well, we don't need consultants anymore because we've got Google. Well, the consulting industry has grown by double digits every year since. So that didn't quite pan out the way that people thought. Smaller things, practical things, PowerPoint. You don't have to go back more than 20, 25 years. Consultants didn't do their own PowerPoint. There were design teams that would do PowerPoint. PowerPoint got good enough that any idiot could operate it. Boom! All of a sudden, consultants start churning out PowerPoint slides, and loads of them. That made a big difference to the jobs to be done, the people that you needed, the size of a pyramid. I didn't really notice that. It didn't happen. There wasn't a moment when everyone went, oh my gosh, PowerPoint's much more useful now. The shape of the consulting industry is going to change. And then another issue that I don't think people necessarily considered, but we should come back to because it's really pertinent, is primary research. So there's been a really important part of strategy consulting for a long time is you have to go and originate the information, right? It doesn't exist, often because you're in a niche, right? Or the question is so specific. Maybe it's a bit of competitive intelligence you need or something. And so what do? You get on the phones. And when I started, that was cold calling. That was sat in a booth, 12 hours a day, smashing the phones. It was a ritual. Somewhere in the last 10 years, that all moved to expert networks. Fundamentally changed the jobs to be done, fundamentally changed the shape of the pyramid. So lots of things have had an impact. Right, actually, I would say one of the hallmarks of the consulting industry is just the nature of it. It's incredibly resilient to change. The only constant is the quality and depth of answers has just relentlessly improved. And so I'm looking at this with hopefully an element of respect, realism, but incredible optimism. Because to me, this is just the next frontier of quality of answers we're going to be able to get to.
The FT published an article talking about McKinsey completely re-engineering their entire business.
Yes.
You said there's been transformational events within, some slower, some bigger over the last years. Do you think is different this time?
I think the perspective of the consultancy matters a great deal, right? And again, we should be careful of generalising, right? Because it's very easy to kind of ascribe a certain way of working to each consulting firm. If you're a management consultant, people make memes of this stuff, which you find very funny if you're in the industry, and if you're outside the industry, you probably think it's desperately sad. The archetype of, a 15 to 20 person McKinsey transformation team or strategy team in a Fortune 50 business for 2 years, that needs completely re-engineered, right? For a whole range of reasons. Some of the activity that's being undertaken can be done by a machine. CEOs are not interested in any project that lasts even more than 3 months because they just think it's a nonsense that anything would last so long. So there's a whole range of reasons why that doesn't fit. And so, if you're McKinsey, and if that has been a material part of your revenue model and your staffing model, things have got to change a lot. If you are working, as I tend to do, in the mid-market with private equity investors, teams of 3 have been the norm for years and years. And projects are measured in weeks, rarely in months. And yes, there's still going to be an impact, but the amount of rewiring you've got to do is very different. And the expectation from a private equity investor about time to value has always been sky high, very discerning buyer set. And to generalize, probably, a greater push than you would get in a Fortune 50 or FTSE 100 setting. So I think the level of impact is going to vary quite materially, firm by firm.
So on that, getting specific, what are the value moves for you within your business at the moment? So, classic with the size of the team, slightly smaller for you, but you sold teams, IP, analytical horsepower.
Yeah.
If the model now provides elements of that, where's the value move for you moving forward in order for you to differentiate yourselves in your market for your clients?
We're investing quite a lot. We're deploying a lot of tools. And they're remarkable, right? And they can achieve incredible things. The easiest answer when we think about tooling in the internal sense of it, I'll come to the offering sense in a minute. In the internal sense, the big issue is it's changing the productivity equation at different points of the pyramid. As a partner, right, there are certain things that for years you have relied on a team to go and do, right? Folks, I need to get smart on X, wait 24 hours, wait 48 hours, receive information. Nope, just do it right now. right, live. It's making you as a partner, and critically, the individual with the IP, the individual with the subject matter knowledge who can test, discard slop, like without thought, right? Kind of take information. That doesn't make any sense. Take information. Oh, actually, that does make sense in context. Okay, rebuild the prompt and go. Right, it's incredible. The counterpoint, there is a body of activity that I had first year, second year individuals doing. It doesn't need doing anymore, right? It is taking care of itself. And there has been an impact on our hiring. There has been an impact on the shape of our pyramid. I don't know if that's going to last forever and ever, right? But certainly at the moment, we have considered it just sensible to reduce our entry-level hiring, because we're just not finding we've got productive jobs to be done by those teams. That raises a broader long-term question, which we'll probably touch on before the end of the session. But that's had a big impact. The other impact is there are already project types. There's project types that are about AI, right? So there's questions to be answered that weren't questions before, because AI exists and that raises the question. But then there's types of work we can do, or questions that we couldn't have answered before that we now can answer, because speed and access to data has changed, and our ability to analyse vast quantities of poorly structured data has just gone through the roof. So, I mean, it's having a sort of internal operating model change, but already having a meaningful impact on client work.
And that change in terms of the operating model, slightly reducing maybe the intake at graduate level, as the profile of the people that you're going to hire, do you think that will change, or do you think that will continue in terms of that apprenticeship model, where possible, to produce the next partners?
So that's the bit that, and as I speak to other consulting leaders, as I do all the time, right, this is the bit that no one's really got an answer to. It would be very easy to say, yes, I'm going to kind of hugely skew my hiring now away from just, very high caliber, smart, articulate, well-educated graduates. Just put a whole skew on that with folks that have got a data engineering background specifically, or people who've done university degrees that are kind of lead them particularly well into prompt engineering and so on. I could say that. The issue is, I still need to hire today for my partner class of 2040, of 2045. And to being a consulting partner will always require a certain set of skills. And, those skills are as much about analysis, quant, as they are about qual and human connection, and the ability to render the complex simple, and the ability to guide a client and genuinely counsel a client. And that requires, actually, I would say, an uncommonly broad set of skills. So what's the answer?
It's a difficult one, because counterintuitively on the AI topic, AI, you could argue, would make the judgment, the relationships, the ability to impact within a boardroom, even more important, even more valued, but you need those quant skills. You need to have built up the work at the more junior level to have that impact and to build up that ability. It's a tough challenge. I haven't heard a great answer or a great plan from any of my consultancy clients yet. There's part of it. Are you saying you're going to continue to invest in graduates, continue to commit to the apprenticeship model, even if the requirement of those individuals isn't the same as what it would have been even 24 months ago?
The easy answer, which I don't think works, by the way, is to say the apprenticeship model is over. Henceforth, management consultants will have a career in industry, and they'll move across with 10 to 15 years of industry experience under their belts. I don't think that works. There is absolutely a role for people moving laterally out of industry. They bring a huge amount of expertise. They bring very different perspectives on lots of different questions. But certainly as someone who grew up very much in the apprenticeship model, I believe it's a métier. I do believe it's an apprenticeship, and I believe you learn those skills. You learn those skills through repetition. So I don't have a good answer. The only paradigm I can probably draw is, we all know that the Big Four essentially subsidise the entire world of finance by training, right? I don't know how many thousands of young men and women on audit, right? And they know full well that they're not going to hang on to many of them, but they do it because they recognise that, first of all, you have an alumni network, which is helpful, right? But secondly, it's just the cost of doing business, and I think that may be part of what we need to do. We need to recognise that we've got to invest in entry-level talent because it's an important part, of growing that capability. I interviewed someone yesterday, and he had a brilliant little phrase. He said, in consulting, he believes subject matter expertise begins at 10 years. Right, 10 years, you are just able to start to say, I've got some subject matter expertise, but you're kind of grade 1 subject matter expertise. So we've got to get people to 10 years with a set of skills. I don't have a good answer to this.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interest. I don't think that we're going to solve that answer in the next few minutes. So inside your firm at the moment with regards to AI, how much of it is focused on productivity, efficiency versus innovation or new product services for your clients at the moment?
If you'd asked me this question 12 months ago, it would have been probably 80-20 internal. I think we're probably now 60-40. And I think the right part of the balance is we tip over in the other direction. We can do things that are genuinely amazing, right? When you think about, fundamentally the core of the quality of any consulting project is the quality of inputs, right? The basis of decision making. Yes, you can go and get external data, and that's a very important part of the business. But personally, some of the most powerful moments I've ever had as a consultant have been taking a client's own data, right? Information that they have sort of technically always had access to, right? And then through the combination of being good with data, having the time to look, right? Having the permission to look, to render that information into a picture that makes them go, oh my gosh, right? Actually, there is something about my business that I didn't know, and amazingly, it's only because I didn't look. But there's so much about the data in an organisation that the company still can't access, right? We do quite a lot of pricing work, and one of the things you can do in pricing, particularly if you're pricing software, is look back at your existing customer base and understand whether or not there's a pricing opportunity in what we call the back book. The number of my clients that have no contract management system, right? So you don't actually know if the Barton Partnership's contract with you allows for a price increase. You don't know. So you sample, right? I don't need to sample anymore. Tens of thousands of PDFs can just get crunched overnight.
Yeah.
And I've got the answer. And so you just get an entirely different body of information, and therefore you can answer a different question, or indeed do an entirely different project about something you couldn't do before. So it's one of my grounds for optimism, right? There's just more to be done. There's more that can be done.
So is that more or different types of work that you're now doing with similar clients because of what AI is allowing you to do within those projects, or is that you're doing projects that you've always done, but you're doing them differently and delivering them in a different way? So
it is the former, the latter 100%, right? So there's no project we're doing today that doesn't have AI. We've inserted AI clauses in all of our contracts. We have in every single one of our pitch decks. We have to introduce the fact that we're going to use AI. It's just constant, right? There's no issue. It's just a question of how much AI we're using in a project. The third category is then the question we're answering is the question of how should I be using AI in my business, right? And that's when we're kind of developing AI strategy into an organization, which is another whole realm of work that, frankly, I was not doing 3 years ago. But now I are. Companies whose entire question on a diligence question is, what will be the impact of AI on this asset? It's quite different.
And you're having to learn that, new, like most other consultancy firms are doing that type of work, navigating their own internal AI questions as well as those of their clients.
Yeah. Yes, and there's something a little bit humbling about that, because when something is so new, right, and critically changing so quickly, right, you've got to be on top of that, right, all the time. And what fundamentally allows us as a management consultancy or strategy consultancy to know better than our clients? It's an interesting question, right? I mean, part of it is we've just got more time to figure it out, right, because the kind of answering these questions is our business. We're not running a day job and trying to stay on top of trends. But the other thing is just the N of examples, right? So I mentioned software pricing earlier on. Software pricing is going through the most exciting period of software pricing for maybe ever, right? I mean, I'm sure many people listening will think, how exciting can software pricing possibly be? But you'd be surprised. It's very interesting.
That's a whole different podcast.
Whole different podcast, and you should subscribe to that. But we've already answered this question for 25, 30 businesses, right? So it's a cutting edge topic. I mean, a private equity investor this week, it's clear that they're just like, we're aware something important is going on in software pricing. Can you tell us what it is? And we're like, well, yes, we can. And they said, have you seen it? And we're like, yes, 30 times. So a part of it, and that's why consulting works, right? You're answering the same question in different contexts. A consulting organization is fundamentally a learning organization. That's one of the reasons why it's valuable.
And you as CEO of the Teneo management consulting business, so take the client piece, the market-facing piece out. How are you using AI to lead your business and to run your business?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask that question.
I'm happy to share. As CEO of my business, I'm learning. I'm seeing some efficiencies. I'm seeing some amazing things that I could do to lead the business better, to be the most prepared person at every meeting internally. And it's fantastic, but I'm learning, and I've got some people in my firm who are streets ahead of where I am. Yeah. Do you find that?
Look, I mean, pretty much exactly the same place. I am much better at advising clients on the impact of AI to their business than I am about redesigning my personal workflow, shall we say. And same dynamic, right? I mean, I know it's a trope, but there is a real generational dynamic here, right? I spent my whole life in tech, so I feel embarrassed, right? But then on the flip side, right? I mean, a huge amount about my life is talking to clients, and then another huge part of my job is leading my team and talking to my team, and that's not changed at all, right? So there's an extent to which it's not going to remove that element, but preparedness, you're absolutely right. I mean, anyone who walks into a client setting or a prospect not knowing who they are, what they do, where they fit, I mean, you could maybe be excused 5 years ago for doing that, because you just hadn't quite got round. I had a quick look at all I know. Do you know much about our business? I had a quick look at the website. I mean, that doesn't cut it anymore, right? There's no excuse.
Yep, I agree. So the kind of future of consulting, give me an idea of where you think the industry is going to be in 2 years' time.
So at a macro level, I think the consulting industry is going to go through a period of hypergrowth, right? I'm talking, 15, 20% compound growth. I think the dynamics of where that growth is going to occur are going to be quite fascinating and a bit difficult to predict, but it's not going to be the same for everybody. So, I mean, and in part that's explained on the micro, because if you look at big players in the industry, right, there's just broader disruptions that are occurring to the big four, right, because there are other parts of their business models that are going to be very impacted by AI, and shared profit pools and so on mean the ability to invest and move and change is an issue. And MBB, they're big beasts, right? And they're partnerships, and I think partnerships are slow tankers to change, right? Because you're inevitably you're playing with individuals' money, right? And making big bets over here requires people to take home less money. Fortunately, Teneo is in a corporatized structure. We're private equity owned. I think those consulting firms can be more agile, can pivot faster, so it's going to make a big difference. There's also going to be an incredible boom in the independent. Right. I mean, if you think about the independent, right, that's either a partner who's decided they're just done with being in something and they just want to spend time with their clients and get rid of the noise and never do a timesheet again. And there's people who've been in industry, retired, want to start kind of consulting. They are empowered, right, in a way that they've never been empowered before, right? I mean, I meet a lot of people who approach the end of their career and they're thinking, well, am I going to? I'm not quite happy where I am. Shall I join another platform? And in the main, they used to always say, I thought about hanging my own shingle, but heavens, that feels like a lot of effort. And, then I've got to do everything myself, and before I know it, I'm writing my own slides and so on. Now they're thinking, I don't have to write my own slides. I don't need to hire anyone. So actually, a meaningful, I think, element of growth in the market will be independence.
We're certainly seeing that. And as you know, we have an independent consulting business complementing the search business. And I think we've never had as many established partners making the move out to become independent advisors.
Fascinating.
And I think, it sounds maybe slightly wrong, but the barrier to entry to actually do that yourself with a network, an established network, doing the work you want to do, being able to deliver that, particularly with the expert network and the independent consulting networks for resources as well, has never been better. However, I also think with the direction of AI that the bigger firms still hold a huge advantage in terms of deploying successfully for consultants. I don't know if you agree.
So look, definitely. I know how much we're investing in. It's a lot. I think that might lend you to a conclusion that it's the boutique that's challenged. I don't know. Having grown up in a boutique, I've got a lot of admiration for quality of answer and the quality of work that they can do, but they might just end up squeezed, unable to invest in the best tooling, still without the cost advantage of an independent. But so I think the way this is going to shake out, there's going to be a lot of disruption at a macro level. This is terrific for the industry, right? Because people have got more questions. The questions are faster to answer, not necessarily easier to answer, but faster to answer. And the quality of the answer is better than it ever was before. Sort of what's not to...
Does it completely change pricing structure?
So anyone, which is quite rare in strategy consulting, right? But anyone who's on T&M, forget that, right? Now, I personally, kind of amazed when I find anybody in our industry who's still T&M billing. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. And then when I say T&M billing, true T&M billing is rare in our line of work, but kind of weekly run rates, they're over, right? Everything will move to fixed price. Because things will speed up, gain share models will proliferate, no question. And I think we'll go through a period of time where there probably will be pricing pressure, but then I think the proposition will evolve and take back the oxygen that's been left behind. So if I give you an example on commercial diligence, right? So that was probably the area that everyone thought would be, we'll have press the button and a CDD will pop out. And I've seen some really interesting things, but I don't know any credible investor that would take a push button CDD and take it into the IC. And I've no doubt there's going to be people listening going, that's rubbish. I do it all the time. I've got a brilliant business. I'm sure you do, and good luck to you. But certainly my clients are not going to push a button, get a document, take it to IC. Can we accelerate the rate at which I build a market sizing model? Yes. Can I accelerate the rate in which I understand legislative trends? Yes. Can I get to Can I get to market trends and calculate a growth rate faster? Yeah, undeniably so. But I believe the quantity of data that's going to end up in data rooms, it's going to explode. Right? Sampling, it's gone. We'll do with the whole thing. We will, we're not providing a revenue cube in this CDD process. Well, you won't need to provide me with a cube. You'll just put all your contracts in here and I'll build a cube, because I'll build a cube in a day. So then the question, it'll just be a question of, well, you can just do so much more in the 3 weeks of your commercial due diligence. So of course that's worth it. It might even be worth more than it was before, because it's not a like-for-like product. The elements of that product that relied on commonly available secondary information that you're putting together in a smart way to draw an inference, that shrinks right down. Importance of primary research will go right up, right? I mean, let's remember these LLMs, they only understand what they've been trained on, right? And a huge amount of every answer we do is information that we've originated. We've gone and we've found an expert. We've got a data point. It's a question that the internet has never had answered. So the LLM doesn't know what it is, I really don't. I mean, I'm really not interested in what a Reddit stream says. The annualized growth rate of mid-market ERP software is in Germany. Like, I'm really not sure Reddit's the right source. So just because the LLM can spit it out at me doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah. Okay. It's interesting. And in terms of challenges, to the position we talked about, the bigger players. We talked about the independents, maybe squeezing the boutiques. There are a number of AI native consultancies in the market that have been built, that have been well backed. What are your thoughts? Do they keep you up at night in terms of differentiating for their clients against you?
There are many things to keep you up at night. They aren't one of them. So maybe I'm incredibly naive and I'm going to watch this podcast back in, maybe they'll play it at my leaving party in 12 months' time. No, is the short answer. There are some people doing some really smart stuff to automate some of those elements that I described, right? And they'll provide a tool, right? And it'll either be a tool that's equivalent to one I built myself, or I will just buy their tool, right? And I will just get on with evolving my service. There are more interesting, and probably the AI native consultancies that are really going into organizations, my clients, and they are leveraging AI to help transform operating models in real time. Now that's fascinating, because there's a practical application of that. There's a practical reality of that, which currently that's not the business that we're in. Although we've got a very interesting JV partnership with ThoughtWorks, so that we can do that in partnership with them. I don't know how it's going to shake out. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise, a lot of light, heat and light. But I have seen some really dumb stuff. Right? I've seen players generating league tables and lists and heat maps, and then rocking into private equity portfolios and saying, "Do you know that of your 20 portfolio companies, we think 12 of them are red for AI maturity?" And I got operating partners just throwing them out the door. How on earth would you know? Oh well, we've got proprietary tooling. Well, trained on what? Right? I mean, this is a mid-market business doing whatever it's doing, right? I mean, no LLM can tell you how digital maturity is. You find out, you've got to go and speak to the employees that work there. You've got to do the hard yards. You've got to do the proprietary research. So that then takes the shine off this model, because, actually I think almost some of the marketing and some of the way that they project themselves, I think sort of undermines them. Instead, smart people can do incredible things in a business, automating in real time, transforming in real time, and that's going to be a really powerful offer, I think. Whether or not that disrupts kind of typical target operating model redesign, I don't know.
And you mentioned the JV with ThoughtWorks. It's interesting. There's obviously a lot in the market at the moment, whether it be Microsoft, KPMG, Anthropic. There's a lot of joint ventures. Do you think that's a key next step for a lot of consultancies to form these?
So I do think it's a key next step, because I think if you see this, which I'm sure many people will say this is a really, really naive and prosaic way of looking at it, but if you see AI as sort of the next wave of digital transformation, right? And I think it's more than that, but in some ways, no, that is what it is. Then the market has already got wise to the idea of a strategy divorced from execution. There's a big air gap, right? Lots of PowerPoint has been written that didn't turn into anything. So I think going into this already, there is a real expectation from many clients that says, right, if you're going to come in and advise me on what my AI strategy should be, how should I be leveraging AI to transform my business model or optimize my workflows and so on, I don't just want the thinking, right? I need proof. Okay, now whether that is proof and end-to-end execution, I think there's still a question mark as to that. But that ability to take an idea, right, and in the engagement, right, prove it. And that's more than just, throwing together some HTML wireframes and saying, oh, the front end would look a bit like this. Make it happen, right? Show me that you can make this workflow go end to end. And I think you need that. And that's a core component of what our work with ThoughtWorks is about. So ThoughtWorks has traditionally interacted with the CIO. AI is really about every other member of the C-suite other than the CIO, and the CIO. And that's where we play. So there's an opportunity for us to drag them into a whole bunch of conversations. Drag them makes it sound unwilling, but work with them into a whole series of conversations. But then we lack the technical heft, right? And someone like a ThoughtWorks, who is incredible pedigree in building custom dev. That's the logic behind it.
Is there a danger do you think, with the JV? So, if you're tied to a particular business, we go back to the consulting industry, the sort of, whether it be system integrators, whether it be the consulting arms of the Big Four, where they, Salesforce, ServiceNow, whatever it might be, and actually then the strategy behind that was quite difficult to build. It was more challenging. If you're then effectively a Anthropic Claude shop, or you're tied in with Microsoft and their suite, does that make the actual strategic projects and advisory elements quite difficult, or do you think that's just a necessary that you need to be partnered with a big player?
I don't think anybody in this market is demanding exclusivity, and the advice I give to clients is, if nobody's demanding exclusivity, why on earth would you give it away? So someone like ThoughtWorks, right? They're agnostic, right? They're leveraging all the best technology, and they'll pick up and drop models depending on whatever is best. So I think the core is remaining flexible, being open to experimentation. I mean, the other dynamic that is looming very large is tokenomics, right? I mean, we are already at the stage of not just what's the best model, right, but what's the best ROI, because things are getting pretty expensive. I think tokenomics will probably be the word of 2026. My boss said last week he was expecting his mum, who lives in relatively rural Ireland, to say the word tokenomics to him before the end of the year, which I thought was probably a step too far. But it's going to become a big deal. So we're already, this whole thing is maturing at such a state. All of a sudden, it's not just about novelty. It's not just about horsepower. It's about horsepower at what cost. And so that demands flexibility.
And if you were to think further into the future, 10 years from now, what does the consultancy industry look like?
I've absolutely no idea. I go back to Amara's law, right? Absolutely no idea. At the core, and I'm sure there'll be many people. Well, there probably aren't many people listening at this point in the podcast, because if they have an issue with management consultants, they turn this one off long before now. But management consultants at the core are fulfilling a capability set that most organisations can't manage to maintain internally, right? For reasons of bandwidth, hierarchy, employee value proposition, access to repetition and competitive insight. When you boil it down to the fundamentals of why consulting adds value, many of those things AI is not going to disrupt, right? It's not going to invalidate. It's going to raise the bar in all sorts of ways. But I think the work that we'll be doing will be different. I think the questions we will be answering will be different. I think, hopefully we'll be in a boom of economic productivity, which, unfortunately, the benefits of that productivity, there's a very good chance are going to be very unevenly felt through society, and that's a debate, but not a debate for this podcast. So there's a part of me that thinks it's going to look a lot like now, but just better. Or is it different? If I think about where consulting was 20 years ago, right? I mean, on some levels, just so fundamentally different, and on other levels, so totally the same. So, who knows?
I think that's a good place to
All right.
to leave it. Thank you, Tim.
No,
Really
thank you for having me. Just listening to me droning on.
That's been the Spotlight on podcast. Please tune in for the next one.